Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus, coming to you very, very late on a Monday night. It is the 23rd of September, the year of our Lord, 2024. We're closing in on that magic date. Yep, the 5th of November. And it's going to answer the question, is there still an America in these United States, or have we all just given up? Stand by, we shall see. But for today's episode, no, that one's coming. Don't you worry. For today's episode, we're going to do a McKinney Monday, if you will, of sorts. I'm going to entitle it No Hate. We're going to talk a little bit about the city council, more so the proposition. And I know I've talked about them before. I feel the need to revisit because it is going to be on the November ballot. And I want to be fair and even-handed, even though I have a position. And I will reveal that as if I didn't already. But really what I want to focus on is the fact is there can be arguments both ways. And I really find it difficult to find fault with somebody that just philosophically disagrees, right? I don't want to be driven by emotion. I don't want to be driven by personalities. I want to be driven by a philosophy or a thought process or perhaps even an ideology, which, yeah, that can be a sticky wicket at times because I don't necessarily think running your life by your ideology is always going to end well. That being said, we're also going to touch a little bit on the school board and their continuous lack of action. So please stick with me. Join me when we get to the program. In the meantime, let me remind you the best way you can help me continue to make a difference, continue to be heard, to grow the show, right? To build this out because, look, the algorithms don't like us. The social medias don't like us. The interwebs used to be a free place, and it is slowly ratcheting down what is permissible. And while I am not 100% in support of 100% free speech, I believe the limitations should be few and far between with very specific reasons. And just because you don't like what somebody is saying, particularly when it's political in nature, does not mean you get to shut them down. That is not what the Founding Fathers envisioned. That's not what any of my predecessors that served in the military would have ever been all right with. So let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot more at play here. That being said, you can like, share, and subscribe to this here podcast. Join me on the social media of your choice. I am currently hosting a page and a group on Facebook. I am a pro at Gab. I drop in at MeWe. And for now, you can still find myself speaking on this here podcast on the YouTube. All right, with that, here we go on with the show. So, whenever you talk local politics, the personality injects itself, right? You cannot ignore personality. It's both at a grander scale, and I want to say grander, a more personal scale than the national, and I would say in many ways even more important. When you're talking about local politics, you're talking about people that you likely run across in your day-to-day business, or at least have a friend that does, right? There's maybe 1-2 degree separation at most from all of our local officials. I mean, I can honestly say that I've been blessed to meet, shake hands, and speak with at least 4 of the people on the city council, probably 5. And while I don't necessarily hold them all in the same regard, I don't hate any of them. And I think it's a huge mistake to get motivated by your emotions, whether it's hate or love, when you're making decisions. Another show that I listened to a lot back in the day and sporadically now talks about the idea when you're buying real estate, you want to think like a Vulcan, right? You want to separate yourself completely emotionally. You want to be Spock, right? Well, I look at local politics When you're making a decision on an issue, that's how you need to look at it. When you're working with or supporting a candidate, that is only a piece of the puzzle. All right. So I said I was going to try and be objective here. So let me do this. There is an advantage to having long-term people serving in capacity as city or even school district government, right? We want people that know everybody, that work the deals, that know what's going on, kind of the proverbial knows where the bodies are buried kind of situation here. But you also want somebody that has good positive relationships with the surrounding areas and has been around and knows how things work. Now, that doesn't always work in our favor, but I can see the argument here. I'll even concede there's something to be gained with that. My personal feeling is, and I know a gentleman that has done just that. He served his time in a neighboring town, and now he's quasi-retired, but he spends his time working on the Economic Development Corporation or the Community Development Corporation. I don't remember which it is, but it's in a smaller city that is now actually one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. And he's been working on master plans and different things. And while I don't know necessarily enough about what his master plans are or whether or not I would personally be on board with it, I appreciate the fact that he served his time in city government and now he's sticking around and investing in the future of the city that he serves. And he hasn't gone and sailed off into the sunset. He hasn't taken his ball and gone home. He's still actively involved in the city. And to be fair, once upon a time, it was just a little rinky-dink town, much like Frisco was back in the day. And it's up and coming. And I think in large part of his visionary look at it, and not just him, there were other people involved in this. Now, I know there's a number of people that are actually from that area or moved there a long time ago that are probably not super enthusiastic about all that's going on out there. But I will just tell you, having been in ground zero of the growth of Collin County, being in McKinney and watching McKinney, Frisco, Allen explode in population, not to mention Farmersville, Princeton, Anna, Melissa, right? Prosper, Salina, all the cities around us have just exploded in population. Now, that's not necessarily fantastic if you were looking to get out into the country, but if you're looking to get in early, if you're looking to be part of a community, okay. The problem is, as the cities hit 150,000 or 200,000, it became apparent that the city leadership wasn't really concerned what we, the citizens, wanted, or we, the, let's call it entry-level people wanted. They were more concerned about increasing their power, their tax base, their notoriety, bringing in attractions. Now, to be fair, that is not all bad. We want people to be forward-thinking. We want people that have a vision. We want people that are working to improve the city that we're in. The question is at what cost? The question is, have they weighed this out? And I'd submit to you that they probably did, but they didn't really consider what we thought. That would be my way of addressing that. So you got to ask yourself, is that good enough? Is that what the goal of a representative republic is? You know, we can sit around, we can whine, we can complain, we can say that, you know, the rich people always get what they want, and, you know, the lobbyists and running things and so on and so forth. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what we do now, right? So, in the context of local stuff, right? We've got a couple of different factions, I guess, if you will, that are vying for control of the city or the area or the community as a whole. I think a lot of them are actually, I wouldn't say lockstep, but of like mind, right? You've got your basic, we'll call them Main Street people, right? They just want a nice, safe city. They don't want to be pestered. They want their kids to be able to go out and play. They want to be able to go and see nice things and buy nice things and not see dirty, nasty stuff all over the roads, not see a mess. They don't want crime problems. They just want a nice city. Then you've got your folks that are all about the commerce, right? Chamber of Commerce. We want our businesses to grow, be promoted. We want to make lots of money. And again, can't fault them for that, because if the businesses aren't making money, they don't stay in business. And if a business doesn't stay in business, they go away. Other things, maybe not as desirable, come in. So it kind of feeds upon itself. So that's where we got to decide. What's the overall policy or ideal that's driving the city that we live in? So the frustration that can be had is people are always wanting to develop, right? People want things to grow. They want to create a showplace for the city. So you have to determine what's the best way to do that. Now, you have to have a certain amount of population to get certain attractions. And to get those attractions, there's going to be a cost involved. You know, what is it that the taxpayers are going to have to pony up in order to get this thing, whatever it may be? Now, there's arguments to be had on both sides of the equation. If you're going to get an attraction or a store or business or whatever in your city or within the ETJ, which would grow your city, that's going to cost you, let's say $100 million. Obviously, that's not a real number, but just play along here. But you're going to say that over the next 5 years and the jobs created and the things that are going to be attracted and built in the area, we expect to net out, which a net would mean we're going to see 200 million. I'm again making these numbers up. They're not real. And we've invested 100 million. We're going to net out $100 million. Now, if you could really sell that, I mean, that's impressive. We want that, right? That's giving us 100% back of what we've put in. But what gets interesting is when that number gets much, much smaller. So the city's perhaps investing $90 million, but they really only expect to see a payout of $95 million. That's a giant risk for a little reward. Whereas that $100 million that's supposed to give you $100 million back, in other words, $200 million gross, that's a much greater reward, but perhaps an even higher risk. And a lot of this stuff has to be balanced out and developed, right? In the old days, when a company would come in and they're putting up their own money or their investors' money, they're going to be very careful in what they do. But nowadays, a lot of that's offset by taxpayers, by municipal funds, by tax breaks, i.e. the taxpayers. So they don't have to take as great a risk. In fact, the city or the municipality or the special tax district or the school district takes on a share of that risk, knowing that they can always go back to the taxpayers and pick more money out of our pockets, because what choice do we have? So in today's day and age, that's what we're dealing with. So say you like the idea that we've got a couple of nice big office buildings going up on 75. My question would be what was the incentive plan to get the companies to go in and build that they didn't do it before now? What's especially interesting to me is knowing that we've gone through the last 4 or 5 years and there's not as much need for office space. Why are we getting office buildings now? What's the expected return? What are they going to be used for? Same thing with hotels. If we couldn't justify a hotel 5 years ago, why is it suddenly justified now? Now, look, if this venue that goes in off of 75 and 121, which, by the way, I'm quite excited about, whether or not I'll actually ever attend a concert there, that's another story. But the fact that it's there, the fact that it's something that we would have that Frisco and Allen wouldn't have, or even Plano, I like that. I think it's a great idea. And kudos, I hate to admit it, but kudos to our mayor for pulling that off. And I don't know if he gets all the credit, but certainly he gets credit for the bad things. He gets credit for the good things. At least that's the way it rolls in my world. So as the chief executive, if you will, of the city of McKinney, I like it. I think it's a good idea. I don't know that we're ever going to get all of our money back out of that specific investment. But if it spurs other development, if it brings other things in, if it attracts another hotel, these are all net positives, at least in theory, for the city of McKinney. And that's the big picture. That's something that we have to be willing to accept and understand. And a lot of that is only accomplished when you have people that have been involved and integrated within the city and how it works for a period of time. Which brings us back to our original topic, term limits. Now, myself, I believe that 8 is enough, right? 8 years, 2 terms, that's enough. Now, coincidentally, they can come back and run for another seat and do another 8 years there. I don't see that there's a lot of call for that or a lot of interest in that. But hey, there are people that legitimately want to serve and they think that it's their calling. And if the voters agree with them, okay, fine. I'm not going to fight that. But you get your 8 years as mayor and then you're done. And that's worked fine for decades and decades. I don't see any reason to change it. Now, would I feel the same 20 years ago about it as I do now? Maybe. Probably. Again, I think that you want fresh blood. You want new people coming in. You want to refresh the vision of the city. Every 6, 8, 10 years, you want to see that. I think if you get the same guy or the same lady in charge for an extended period of time, like Alan, things get stagnant. They tilt a certain way and certain things occur that, maybe the city's not necessarily enthusiastic about, but because that person's amassed that much power and that much influence, what they want happens. Whether it's they wanted it or they were sold on it by somebody else and then therefore they want it, it generally happens. I don't see where that's necessarily a net positive, but again, this is something we've talked about before. Ideally, the city fathers, right, the people that are most vested in the city have an interest in the city doing well. They have an interest in the town growing up. They have an interest in everybody in the area doing well. That doesn't mean that they don't get theirs. That doesn't mean that they're not successful, that there's not a payoff for their early investments. But what it means is they're concerned about everything else going on around them. I don't think we really see that by the giant corporations that come in, whether it's Raytheon or some of these huge hospital companies or, something along those lines. But it doesn't mean that there isn't still a net positive. It doesn't mean that there's not something to be gained. It just means I think they are far less concerned about we the people than what our city leaders. So we need to consider, where's the balance here? Where do we weigh these things out? I think the simplest way to accomplish that, right? Because you got your balance of people that have been there forever and they dictate the terms and everything. And then you've got the chaos, right? You got always somebody trying to one up or do something different and they don't know how things flow. So that's where your term limits come in. You're saying, okay, we appreciate what you've done. And here's the other thing to consider. A lot of these guys that run for city council, or ladies for that matter, they don't just run for city council. They spend some time on the EDC or the CDC or some other functionary within the city government, and then that prepares them to get to city council or mayor. And it's like a achievement, if you will. So they've already put in, say, 6, 8, 10 years doing that stuff in service, and then they get to the city council and they put in another 8 years. And then they're done. And if they're doing it right, they're training up their replacements. They have a succession plan. Like, I'm very confident that whoever the next mayor is, whether, they extend the term limits and we get 4 more years of the guy that's there now, or we get somebody new for 4 more years, for 4 years in their term, I'm confident the city of McKinney is going to survive. I'm confident that the succession plan or the people that have been involved and in the pipeline are going to keep things very consistent. There's not going to be any radical departure, any crazy stuff going on, right? I mean, that's the goal, that's the process, that's the hope. But it's something that we need to work into. It's something we need to understand. Stability is what sells your city. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people looking to go to Seattle or Portland or San Francisco right now. I mean, I could be wrong. There might be some real early investors that are chomping at the bit to go in and buy, depressed buildings at a cheap price. There might be. But as of right now, I don't know. So what does that mean for you and me, right? That's the crux to this. What it means for you and me is, if you live in the city of McKinney, you have to ask yourself, are you confident that there are enough good things that have been going on in the background that we're going to be just fine if we transition into a new leader at the end of 8 years? Or are you worried? Are you perplexed? Are you concerned that there's nobody else up for the task? There's nobody else that can do the job. There's nobody else that's been trained or capable, so therefore we need another 4 years. I guess I've made a pretty good argument why you might want to have a longer term, but I think the safer argument is you don't want just one, and 2 is probably the sweet spot, especially when they're 8 years. The other option being that you could do 3 years of 3-year terms, or 3 terms of 3 years, right? But I really think 10 years is about enough, especially considering, as I said, these people have worked up into that situation. We don't want to be dependent upon, half a dozen people dictating policy in a city for decades and decades. I don't think that's a good way to do things. And I grew up in the Midwest, which that was pretty much par for the course, right? Again, I think we're going to be just fine and we'll survive. Now, in, the last 8-10 minutes here, our school district, I have been critical of some of the things that they have not done. They have not taken action when they know there are issues. And then some members of the school board, Stephanie Odell being one of them, try and reflect that back on the people that level accusations or bring complaints to them or call them liars, right? You can't have anybody say anything negative about the school district. Well, if it's real, if it's happening, and you refuse to address it, you're forcing people to go to the public. You're forcing people to go beyond you. If you would just take care of it, if you would make the changes requested, if you would invest the time in actually caring about the parents and their students, you wouldn't have this problem. But when you have a situation where there's declining enrollment and that the growth in the city is outside of the school district zone, and you have people that are pulling their children, and you're not willing to talk about the shortfall in the budget, you're not willing to talk about maybe closing the school, you're not willing to talk about compressing the number of administrative staff that you have. If you're not willing to take on any of these issues, my question is, what good are you? What purpose are you serving? If you're going to just be a giant rubber stamp, if you're not going to question anything, if you're not going to assert or yourself or use your critical thinking skills, why are you on the school board? I mean, the same could be said with the city council or even the Texas legislature. If you're not going to be there to advocate for the things that are important to you, if you're not going to be there to advocate on behalf of your parents or your students in your district, then what purpose are you serving? Who are you serving? I would submit to you, the mere fact that you're not standing up and you're not doing anything, you're just going along to get along, indicates that you're not really interested in what's going on. You're not really vested in the process. You're there, one, because apparently you don't want somebody else there, or 2, you just don't have anything else going on that you feel if you do this, that it means something, that you mean something. I mean, I'm just guessing here. I'm just spitballing. Some would call it projection. But in my case, I ran for office. I wasn't successful. I may run for office again. Whether or not I'm successful, I'm content with what my level of involvement is at this time. As it is, I have my hands full. I can barely keep up with my podcast. So when I'm coming to you and I'm bringing this to your attention, it's not because I haven't given any thought. It's not because I have an axe to grind. I know that there is a cost to serving. I know that there is an investment of time, energy, and effort in serving. And just because I don't serve on the city council or the school board doesn't mean I'm not serving in another area. I know I've referenced this in the past, but I did serve on, 2 county boards. One of my passions is, how do we get good parks? And how do we do parks in a way that provides something? And it was a tough, bitter pill to swallow, years ago, at this point, 9 years ago, to get your idea shot down, even when it's not your idea, but it's just a kernel of an idea. It's a suggestion. Could we look at doing this? And no, we don't want to. I mean, that hurts. It's no fun. Now, perhaps, I could have done some things differently, or I could have, done a better job selling it. I don't know. You weren't there. But it doesn't mean that's gone away. It doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It just means I got to look at how can I get in a position later on in life that I can affect that change. Certain ideas don't go away. They just get backburnered. You understand? You took the loss. You moved on. So when we're looking at our school board and they won't solve problems, they won't address problems, and they go after people that bring things to them, and they attack the one person on their board that actually asks questions, it leads me to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they're hiding something. Perhaps that they don't want you to know. Now, unfortunately, on the school district, there are no term limits. And if ever there was a cause or a case to call for term limits, this would be it. We've got at least 3 people that are well over 10 years. Now, if we were A-rated and if everything was going perfect and if we were growing and we were just thrilled to death with these people, okay, I could make an argument to, well, we're benefiting with their expertise. I guess we keep them around for a little while longer. But that's not happening. We're not an A-rated district. We're not a growing district. We're a district that's got problems that the board refuses to address. In fact, they put a new superintendent in there that, quite frankly, in my opinion, wasn't ready for game day. He wasn't up for the task. Now, might he grow into it? Maybe. But when you reject the information and the suggestion given to you by the prior CFO that worked under your immediate boss, which was the former superintendent, and then you come in and hire more people against doing the exact opposite of the recommendation, and the school board did nothing and just rubber stamped it, what's the point of the board if they're not going to question, if they're not going to do their oversight? I myself don't understand how the previous superintendent was able to run a school district and do it with less people and do it apparently well and efficiently, even though there was room for improvement, because there's always some room for improvement. Suddenly, the guy that's got the job isn't capable of doing the job unless he has at least 2 more assistant superintendents and other things. Things that make you go, right? So again, do we really want term limits? And if you do, might we consider doing it for the school district? Just saying. You know, and if you want to grandfather everybody in and say, hey, you know what? You guys have been there. We're not going to make this about you. We're going to give you the rest of your term and 1 more full term. And then each person that comes after, they're only going to get 2 4-year terms, or they're going to get 3 3-year terms. However you want to divvy it up, right? I think that's a good way to constantly be refreshing the representation and constantly be improving and growing and coming up with a relevant vision for the future instead of the stagnate, non-questioning, go along, rubber stamp, council, or not council, my apologies, school district that, well, I guess technically, school board that we have now. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of a battle royale at each and every meeting. Don't misunderstand me. But I think there should be conversation. There should be things said publicly. There should be a discussion. There should be some pushback allowed. There should be some open disagreements. That we, the people, can see that there are people advocating for things other than what they're doing. Because not everybody's in lockstep all the time, yet that's what we're supposed to believe. Whether it's with the city council or the school board, there's very few votes that ever occur that there's more than one person that says no. I don't think that's what's best for the city. I don't think it's what's best for the school district. We have to be able to have these discussions and have an open disagreement and come to a conclusion, whether it's a settled agreement or whether it's a compromise. And if we're not willing to do these things, I think it's going to hurt us in the long run. And I really don't think that any of us should support that. And with that, this has been According to Callus. It is coming out really late tonight, but I wanted to get an episode out on Monday, and I know I'm kind of violating the the rules, right? You're supposed to be consistently on time and consistently length and consistent days. Yeah, I've been blowing it. ladies and gentlemen, that's life. I'm going to keep showing up every day that I can and do this. We're going to stick with our process of trying to get out 3 episodes a week, but bear with me. There's just a lot going on right now, and it is all I can do at this time. And with that, this has been According to Callus, and I will see you on the other side.
For all your Texas fashion tees, it's TexianPride.com. Whether you're out honky-tonkin' in Austin, bucking Broncos in Fort Worth, or strolling the San Antonio Riverwalk, Texian Pride is here for you. Support a Texan-owned business and show off your love for Texas with style. Visit TexianPride.com for your next fashionable Texas tee.